I went to Texas A&M and I was a political science major. And, I'm not sure why I majored in that. I just thought politics was interesting. As I was nearing graduation, it hit me that I needed to find a job. And I was fortunate in having mutual friends with a senator out of Waco by the name of David Sibley. And I got an introduction, and they happened to be hiring, and I got hired as a district aide in Waco. Worked there for, I guess, a year before the legislative session in 1993. And I had been doing the scheduling for Senator Sibley, and he thought, I'd really like for you, he asked if I would come down to Austin because he thought it'd be good to have somebody with the Waco perspective in Austin. Came down to Austin, did a legislative session, oddly covering Education Committee for Senator Sibley, and was immediately hooked. And I'll never forget that first session, just the euphoria I felt after the session. As tired as I was, it was just this euphoria at this wonderful experience. And I remember thinking, I've learned more in these 5 months than I learned in the entire 4 years of college. And it was just fascinating, this unbelievable download of information, of contacts, of issues, of parliamentary procedure. Loved every aspect of it, from the game to the policy to the people and to the time, and it was just such a rush. And I knew I wanted to, come back to Austin eventually. But, I ended up working for David Sibley in a variety of roles. I even, worked on a campaign once for him. And eventually became his committee director for the Economic Development Committee, then became his chief of staff, and worked for him for 10 years. And, was fortunate in the experience that I worked for somebody that was very active and who frankly was an effective legislator, and I learned so much. And ended up, after that experience, trying my hand at a state agency. I worked at the Department of Insurance for a year, and then came back as legislative director for David Dewhurst. Did that for about a year, and then the parliamentarian's position came open, and was very fortunate to be appointed by him to that job.